Hello and welcome to another episode of Motorsports with Motorhead. I am your host, Captain Motorhead, and today I want to be able to talk about quite a few things. Still wrapping up some stuff from last week, and then of course moving on into new news from Mexico, where NASCAR finally got to race again, or NASCAR Cup got to race for the first time, and Xfinity Series got to return for the first time since 2008. So, lots to talk about. Do also want to be able to touch a little bit on F1 because it was kind of a good race that they just had. So, we'll talk about that at the end though. But first off, I do want to talk about current safety in NASCAR and the end of the race for Talladega Xfinity Series earlier this year. Connor Zilisch, he got hit by Jesse Love on the back of the bumper going into turn 2, and it was the final lap. Zilisch would spin out and he would go down into the inside wall, hit really hard, hard enough where the back tires came up off the ground. Whole front of the car smashed in. Hard hit for him. There was 3 wide racing right behind him, so right at the time they called caution. Yes, it was 3 wide. I feel bad for Jeb Burton because he was even talking about how they don't usually get a chance to race for a win, and he felt like he could have won that one. And watching everything, because I actually got to watch that one, yeah, I agree. He could have maybe won that one if it would have got to go green. Where they called it yellow, it's a real tough spot to judge. I could honestly say that he might have been out front, but he might have not been. But all that aside, it doesn't really matter. I think that them calling the yellow was right because we had a driver hit an inside wall, and that, like I said, it was a hard hit. Even the announcers, whenever they were watching, they instantly, that's a hard hit. And one of the first things that Connor Zilisch talked about over the radio to his team with his back hurting. So NASCAR needed to be able to call the caution and get the safety crews out there to the car. And I saw a lot of backlash for that. Oh, NASCAR threw a caution they didn't need. Why did we allow a great race to end so horribly? Some people were trying to say, 2 other drivers got robbed of the win because, as I said, they were 3 wide. And it's like, okay, I get what they're saying. I understand they're frustrated and upset. But again, a driver was injured. So much so that he actually missed Texas, and Kyle Larson had to sub for him and ended up winning the race with Zilich's name still on the car. But he was injured. I don't ever want to see a driver get seriously hurt, and just because we want to see a race end nice and is not under a caution, under green, we're going to let him sit there. That's not the right move. The weirdest thing was I saw a lot of people even start to complain after Connor Zilisch came out and said that he wasn't going to race and that they had a sub and it was because of back issues. They were all like, oh, look at this. Now he's having to play into the story that NASCAR wants to tell, and because of the horrible caution, he's having to miss another race. No, I really don't see that to be the truth. There's too much money in all this with sponsors and contracts that I don't think that they would want, especially a new driver up and coming like Connor, to miss any races that he's supposed to be doing. So, and especially to have, as much as I know Dale Jr. likes Larson and he's raced for him before, but to have to reach up to a Cup driver who wasn't supposed to race in this race and ask him to, yeah, I could see that not really being in the cards of something that everyone wants to do or see. So, was it staged? No, I don't think so. And I really don't understand why a lot of people are trying to say that it was. Because look at everything. Go back, watch the replay. Really look at Connor's car. Look at the aftermath. He went to the hospital. Everything lines up for it. Yeah, he had a back injury and he had to wait an extra week to be able to have it be healed. He doesn't want to end up like Jeff Gordon or Dale Jr. they both talk about how bad their backs are all the time. Part of that was due to the suspension and how those cars were set up in the early 2000s, and they've been entirely honest and have talked about that. You hit any bump and you felt it entirely, but it's because they needed to be able to have all the suspension move for the speed they were doing. So it's how that had to be. Well, he hit a wall. It's not because of how the car was set up, it's just because he hit a wall. But we don't want him to still have issues later on. This is his first year racing in Xfinity. This is an up-and-coming driver. So I got upset a little bit when I saw some of that. And, I talked about my first podcast, I want to bring love back to racing. And things like that, it hurts to see because that's not love. That's the exact opposite. That's almost hate. And I see a lot of people just complaining almost to complain. Even when it's a good race, they find something to complain about. And I'm not just talking, oh, well, the wrong driver won because, they're not a fan of that driver or anything. Because even when Denny Hamlin wins, I'll still say it's a good race. Like I did with Michigan. He won. It was a fuel mileage race. Good job, him. I respect him. I respect any driver that's out there, even if I'm not a fan of them. They're doing things that we'll never get to do. Stuff that a lot of us couldn't do. I would like to see any fan get in a car, get out on a track, and be able to do even 10 laps at the speeds these guys do in a pack without losing it and wrecking everybody out. I don't see that being possible. So, I don't like to see the hate just for the hate. And talking about how driver safety doesn't seem to be important to some. It's like, do you want to see people get hurt? You just want to watch for the accidents? Because I remember being like 5 and 6, not really remembering entirely, but knowing that that's the age whenever it was like, oh, accidents are cool. Because you didn't really think about the people getting hurt. And you were just watching these cars that were going in circles, having a little bit of a wreck. But then you got a little bit older and you start to realize, once you're not so naive, that there's real people in those and they can get hurt. And then you start learning more about racing itself, drafting, the passing, the fuel mileage, how pit stops are important. And you could be able to look at it as a whole picture and you see that it's not boring. And if you think it is boring, maybe you're watching the wrong sport. Especially the way how the stages are and everything. Now it changes the whole game up. And I know a lot of people don't like the stage breaks. I'm not the biggest fan of them, especially on road courses. I think we could be able to do away with them. But even with that, it still adds to it. There's a lot there. So we don't need 4 wide, 5 wide racing at times just to be able to cause big accidents at the end and then have it go green just because we want to see the chaos. No. I remember a long time ago, wasn't a huge Kyle Busch fan, but one of the interviews that made me change my mind about him a little bit was whenever he was honest about Daytona even just being a huge wreck fest at this point, and that's just what the fans wanted, and it's what the sponsors want, it's just what everyone wants. And he would wear the shirt of, the biggest wreck day or biggest money day in history because of the fact that that's all it was all these cars worth thousands and thousands of dollars just getting wrecked, hundreds of thousands even. And I think he hit it right on the head with that. Yeah, at the time there was a lot of fans, that's what they wanted. And that's dangerous. I would much rather see clean racing but close, good racing for all 500 laps, if it's a 500 lap race or 250, whatever. I think that's a lot more interesting. And it's cool to see what cars go laps down just from it running green, who's running the fastest, who's passing, who's not. I think that's a lot of good statistics to look at. And I think that's part of what makes it fun for me, because I'm sitting here trying to look and see who's making the biggest moves on the track. Not just like, oh, one car is leading, boring race, which is what a lot of people said about Kansas. There was a lot of other action going on. You had big movers. Ross Chastain kept moving up in the field. Kyle Busch did until he spun out. Like, Chase Elliott did really good for a while. You had all these different movers, and of course you had your normal ones that kind of followed behind. I know that it was a rough day for some teams, Justin Haley being one of them. So there was more there though, and it's just like that with a lot of races. And so not every race needs to be some clenched fist. Oh my gosh, are they gonna wreck every moment? And we need to see crazy finishes where you got cars flipping in the infield or anything. We don't need that. And I hate to see that seems to be what some fans want. So I don't know. It's just maybe they're watching the wrong sport. Like I said, I hate to be like that about it, but I want to see safety be a bigger concern for more fans, and I just want to see the hate taken away, because this is a great sport. All racing, all motorsports is great, and I don't like seeing any hate for any of them. Even F1, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I don't ever hate on it and like, oh, it's a horrible, horrible sport. Like, it's still a good sport, and those drivers are athletes. Any of them are, and especially whenever you are in an open wheel car like that, that's crazy to me. I don't think I could ever be in anything open wheel like IndyCar or F1 car on a track with a whole bunch of other cars going super fast. I did the little two-seater IndyCar thing for the ride-along I did at Kansas Speedway, and that was really cool. But that wasn't even going flat out full speed or anything, and that wasn't with a whole bunch of other Indy cars. That was just with one Indy car flying around a whole bunch of stock cars super fast, and we were getting nowhere near them. You had probably 2 lanes worth between us, and they were on the bottom lane, we were on the top. So it would be like watching a lap car go down to the bottom for a lead lap car to pass him or something. And so I can't say I've experienced anything close to what these guys do. And so it's crazy. And so I would never say it's a horrible sport, but never say it's boring. Watching cars, whether it's in circles or it's turning left and right, go around a track, I think it's entertaining. I think it's fun. Even for like GT series, or I don't watch the motocross because, you want to talk about things that look unsafe. Wow. Every time those guys take a turn together in a pack, it looks like it could be mayhem, but they somehow keep it together, at least usually. And they have some good racing too. I just never really get to follow that. Not saying I wouldn't though, but it's all sport and they're all athletes. And they're all real people. So I don't know. I hate seeing it look like people don't remember that sometimes. And they don't consider that, and they don't consider how some of these drivers feel about it, because I see some guys, most ignore it, but you see sometimes, it hits them. I see some of the guys on Twitter finally respond to fans that are just being hurtful or hateful towards them. It's like, why? Why are you being like this? What have I ever done to you? And it's the truth. It's what have they ever done to you? Nothing, most likely. You might have a few here and there. You have a personal story from whenever a driver was first coming up and they ignored you or didn't sign something or whatever. Well, maybe they were at that track all day and they were tired. There's a whole lot of different things that could be going on in people's lives, because that's the thing, they're still people. Never know. So I want to move on from that, because I could talk about the different safety issues we're having these days. Kurt Busch and his back into a wall a few years ago that altered his career, and some of the steps they've made to correct that, but I still see it lacking. And Xfinity has the older Cup cars basically, and this next gen car I just feel isn't as safe. Now I'd like to see a lot of changes made, and I'm hoping that they're still working on it, or maybe we can just move on to another gen car, because I see nothing but people complaining about this one. And with Ram coming back into it, maybe we can be able to get some other types of cars. I saw a concept art thing, some fan made, where we had Nissan and Hyundai. I believe it had Mercedes in there even, almost looking a little bit kind of like what they have over in F1. We have all these different manufacturers in it, or even the GT series. And I think that'd be really cool if we could be able to reach out and get more in and be able to move on to another generation. What's going to happen with Chevy, the next generation? Are we going to have Cadillac? There's a lot of questions there too. So I think that with some of the changes that are to come with the manufacturers, maybe we can be able to reach out and try and get some more in to be able to increase this fan base, because the Mexico race, I think, went really well. I saw the stats for it. For over 2 million people watched it. We outdid F1 and IndyCar for fans that watch it. So if that worked, why don't we do more? You have Daniel Suarez. He got to have a great homecoming weekend and had a lot of fun. He talked about it in one of the post-race interviews, just how much fun he got to have and how he loves seeing all of the other NASCAR drivers get to experience his country, or even the media people, seeing how his hometown and everything, or not really hometown, but home area, welcomed everyone. Like, it was really cool to see. And we have Shane Van Gisbergen, who, he's from over in England, and I like his celebration at the end where he always kicks the ball into the crowd. A lot of fun. But why don't we try and go over somewhere over in England, where F1 races, or even the GT Series races, and let's try and see if we can put something together there. Or go back to Japan. NASCAR went there once. Why don't we go back? Australia. I mean, there's all these other places that we could be able to try and go, and it'll test the cars too, because that was a cool thing to see. The elevation difference down in Mexico, it actually tested the car's braking system. We saw some had issues with that going into practice. Even Daniel Suarez did for Xfinity. They put him in a backup car, which was a really cool looking backup car, though. I really liked it. And, it tested the drivers, too. So I think it's really cool. I would like to see that happen, to be able to maybe draw in some more fans. Be able to, spread out. I like that we are around America for the most part, because that way most of us get to see the races at least once a year. You could be able to find something that's close enough to be able to drive to, hopefully. But even on the off season, I think we could be able to get some of the guys together, or and take overseas, or do it right in the middle of the season. Even have it instead of at Mexico, next time go overseas somewhere. I think it'd just be kind of an interesting thing to see NASCAR return to something like that, whether it be for a points race or not. So, but I don't know. That's just some hopes there. Especially again with some of the manufacturer changes to come. I just think it'd be the right time to open the door for more. And it'd be a nice change. We've had 75 years of racing, more now, but some fans seem to be getting bored, and maybe that's why they're wanting accidents again, because I know that was a big thing in the early 2000s, but I want to see more true racing. And just having 3 manufacturers, I think, limits some of that. So I would like to see more. And I'm glad to see Ram come into it for the truck racing series, Craftsman, because that's going to be really cool. I think the Ram truck looks nice, and the front end's kind of beautiful, to be honest with you. It's a great looking truck, and I think it transfers really well over to the truck series, and it's going to fit in, and it's going to look nice on the track. I'm hoping they can be able to get some wins next year, so that way it encourages them to be able to stay in and continue building more with NASCAR. It really makes me wonder what's going to be their other manufacturer to come into the picture, though, because as I mentioned in my last episode, a lot of the talk makes it sound like it's not going to be Dodge. So it has me really curious on that. I'm excited to see what more they announce in the next year or two as they fully come into NASCAR. I'm expecting it to be a little slow, so I'm not expecting them to be announcing very much until after the next season. So that's what I'm saying, like a year, maybe even 2, before we hear any news on what they're going to be moving on into with bringing more into the NASCAR scene. So obviously, as I learn more on that, or there's things said, I will make sure to talk about it. I'm excited to see who exactly they do announce as their driver. As I mentioned last week too, rumors say it's going to be Cletus McFarland. But I'm waiting to see a true announcement on that. I've not seen anything, and I have been looking, so waiting to see where that's going to go. But on from all that, as I said, I do want to talk about the actual Mexico race. I got to enjoy the Xfinity race I did work during the Cup race though, so I only got to tune in for part of it here and there. It's always funny with my luck though, because right whenever I turned into the Coca-Cola 600, it was literally as Larson was spinning from the lead. Right whenever I got to tune into the Indy 500, it was right as Larson was spinning. So, for any of you that already watched the race and know where I'm going with this, yes, I finally got to tune into the race right as Kyle Busch spun, went into Larson, taking Larson out of the race almost. He ended up coming back at the end. He actually got the Xfinity fastest lap, which I think that's kind of a way to capitalize on a horrible day. Larson's first words to Cliff, in fact, as he came back out on the track after being in the garage for like 36, 37 laps, he first asked, what is the fastest lap? And he wanted to run that down, and he did, even in a damaged car. So it really makes me think they had a good vehicle. I wish Busch wouldn't have spun. I know it wasn't entirely his fault, though, because of the rain that did hit the track that delayed the race by just a few minutes and everything. So that didn't help the situation. I saw a lot of people, Kyle Busch ran out of talent. I really don't think so. If you watch the replay, a lot of other cars were slipping and sliding right there in that area. He just happened to be the one that actually spun out. And he ended up taking out quite a few other cars, but even more cars joined the wreck afterwards from behind. And I don't think that's due to the wreck. I think that's just due to how slick it was that other cars ended up joining in. Ruined Busch's day. He was done. And he was one of my picks, as I mentioned last week, too, because I talked about Carson Hocevar, Kyle Busch, Daniel Suarez, and SVG Shane Van Gisbergen. Those are my 4 picks of who I thought could have been able to do well and potentially win the race. Cool thing there, because I wanted it to be Daniel due to the fact we were down in Mexico. It is where he's from. He is a dual citizen. And I think it was really great to see that he went home and got to go and enjoy NASCAR back at home, because he started off in the Mexico Series for NASCAR. Did really well. And if I remember correctly, but I don't want to say this for sure, was a champion. But I would really need to make sure on that before I go, oh yeah, he was. But it was nice to see that he got to enjoy that. And even raced with the Mexican ones. Like, that was really cool, for him racing that series over the weekend too. And then to go on to the Xfinity race, win it in a backup car after not even qualifying. By the way, first time that's ever been done in NASCAR history, where a driver failed to qualify and then won the race. So that was a cool little thing for him to be able to accomplish. Seeing the crowd react the way they did when he won, that was truly amazing to see. I really enjoyed that he got the love and praise he deserves. And it was just fun. Again, I want to see that again. I want to see them either go back there or go overseas to where Shane Van Gisbergen's from. Or I don't know if there's any other more diverse drivers that we've had in the series as of late, even if it's just for a race or two. But let's try and get them back in, and let's go to their home area, and let's be able to get them in it. I'm all for going over to Australia, as I mentioned too. So let's just do it. Let's have some fun, because that's what this was. It was fun to watch. It was fun to see the crowd. It was fun to see some of the different sponsors that ended up being on some of the cars. Carson Hocevar, he had a different sponsor that was from Mexico. He got himself in some trouble over the course of the week and everything too, though, and he is now looking at a $50,000 fine, not by NASCAR, by his own team. Spire has fined him $50,000 and is saying that he needs to go to some sensitivity training. It was all due to a comment that he made about the city where they were going down to in Mexico. He basically was talking bad about it, everything that he had heard. And he was honest after he went down there, and he even talked about it in an interview, and he got on Twitter and talked about it too. Kind of tried to apologize that it's not like he was told. It's definitely different. He was basically told it was going to be like a slum to go down to, and it wasn't. And a little bit of arrogance on him. Don't know who he talked to, but I'll also be honest and say that yeah, if you talk to a lot of Americans, that's just what we have been told it is. And at the same time, on the way down, NASCAR haulers had Jeeps, and they had straight like Humvee type trucks and stuff following them with guys with guns all on the back and turrets on top, like straight up protection. So with all that going down too, and knowing that that's going to be how you're going to be going into the cities with all this protection, and then hearing what people are saying, I mean, part of me can't really blame him for what he said. Um, I also was really shocked to see that it was Spire who fined him. I figured if anyone would, it would have been NASCAR themselves, and if they wouldn't have done anything, then it would have just kind of disappeared after a week of people talking about it. And again, because he also apologized quite a few times, and even whenever Spire fined him, he kind of was like, "Whoa, whoa, hold on, guy! Like, I messed up. I admitted to messing up. I apologize." So I don't know. $50,000 seems a little steep for that. I can maybe understand sending him to the sensitivity training and the cultural training that they're talking about doing for him, but the rest seems just a little steep for me. So I don't know. Back to the racing side of things, he also upset Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Uh, According to Carson, he kind of overcooked his brakes a little bit and went a little too deep into the corner. Bumped into the back of Ricky, sent Ricky wide whenever they're going into the Coliseum area. Yeah, I don't know. I watched the replay on that one. I think he just kind of did what he said. He overdrove it. But after the race, Ricky Stenhouse went up to him and got in his window and said that when we get back to the States, I'm gonna, beat your butt. He used some more colorful wording, but as I said, I do want to keep this family friendly. So yeah, wow, that was pretty interesting that he said that to him, because he did wait outside the hauler for Kyle Busch and everything too a few years ago. So he has a bit of a temper on him, but Hocevar has been upsetting a lot of the guys out in the field. Even Denny Hamlin kind of made some comments about his racing on his podcast and thinking that he's gonna upset the wrong driver and it could get him popped. Whether off the track or on the track is still still to be seen, but it'll potentially happen. I think it will. And I don't know if it's going to be Ricky Stenhouse that gets him or not. I don't. Hocevar has been riding up in the front quite a bit. Ricky's been up front here and there, but nowhere near as much, so he's going to have to be able to catch him on the track if he's going to do it out there. Could I see it maybe in the garage area? Yeah. I don't think it would be at Pocono unless Carson does something out on the track again to Ricky, which would cause him to start something after the race is over. But if nothing like that happens, I really don't see it being this coming weekend. It could be a little while longer before anyone does anything back to Carson. And I could be wrong. Maybe Ricky and him qualify near each other, and maybe Ricky just goes ahead and taps him in the back of the bumper near the beginning of the race or near the end of one of the stages and sends him around. Whether it causes a big wreck or anything, of course, that'll be, have to be seen, but I hope not. I would like to see them be able to figure out their differences without it becoming anything crazy like that, but I also know how these drivers are. So it'll be a lot of fun to kind of see how that takes place and how it unfolds there for Hocevar and Ricky. But in the background of the video, Josh Berry just watching Ricky Stenhouse yell at Carson Hocevar, and he checks his watch. Absolutely hilarious. If I ever could, I would totally like to ask Josh Berry, what exact time was it? Right when you checked your watch, right there. I would love to know. Did you actually even look, or was it just one of those looking to make it look like you were looking moments because you saw the camera? Like, I would love to know that, just as a fun little thing for me, because that was pretty funny to see on the video whenever he looked down at his watch. Like, oh, I'm just here chilling, checking the time. Nothing to see. Yeah, that was pretty funny right there. But sorry to get sidetracked a little bit with that little incident, but back to the race itself. Well, gotta love that. I guess it's my microphone literally only likes to work for 30 minutes straight and then it cuts off. So I'm gonna have to get a new microphone because that's ridiculous. I guess it didn't die during my last episode like I thought it did. It just turned off. So sorry about the 1 minute of absolutely nothing there, everybody. And luckily, I at least came to a stop for my sentence right whenever I heard it go beep in my ear, and then I couldn't pause the podcast. So sorry for that 1 minute of quiet as well. Hopefully I didn't lose anybody there. Most of you know me personally, so you can be able to ask me about it. But yep, that's just going to be an awkward minute of silence. Sorry. Still figuring things out. But at least I figured it out about the microphone. So again, I'm going to have to get a different one. That's fun. It's just my Microsoft headphones. I'm using my Xbox ones. It's probably because it's not connected to an actual headset, or not headset, controller. I'm just connected to the computer and I'm not really touching it whenever I'm recording, so it's probably like, oh, it's been 30 minutes of nothing, turn off. Oh well. Sorry for the sidetrack. As I was about to say though, let's get back to the actual race. Sorry for even talking about everything else too much. Should have waited till the end. Not perfect with this yet. Still working on things as I go. I do have a little bit of like bulletin points of what to stick to, but obviously I don't use a script. I do like for this to be real. So, back to it. The rain, as I mentioned with Kyle Busch's wreck, yes, caused a little bit of mayhem. Also changed up a lot of strategies. Whenever I kept getting to check into the race here and there, it was like, oh, hey, this driver's having to pit to be able to change out to slicks, or this team's talking about changing or not changing. Shane Van Gisbergen decided to change out at one point, so he went into the pits near the end of one of the stages, gave up the stage, win, but it was the right thing for him to be able to do, and of course he came back later on. He did win the race, so he knew what he was doing. Won by over 15 seconds, one of the biggest margins of victory in quite a long time, and one of the biggest ever. And he just raced the wheels off. I mean, he on a road course is phenomenal to watch. I wish they would have shown us his feet pedals like they did whenever they were at Chicago, because his feet movement is just absolutely ridiculous. It's normal over in the old series he used to race and everything. I know that overseas, like it's kind of normal, but the Cup guys, they don't have any type of clutch control like what he has. And seeing him feather all those pedals at the same, like, it was crazy. I loved watching that whenever they were up in Chicago. And just knowing that that's what he was doing down in Mexico, and he's trying to say it's not much of an advantage. Man, you just won by over 15 seconds. That's awesome. All their cars were starting to fall off and having their tires go and this and that, and he's saving his tires because of how he's able to use the clutch. Yeah, that's wicked cool to see. The only thing I don't really like about his win, and it's my only issue I really have with NASCAR right now, is the fact that you had a driver who is way outside the cut line for points. And if you still look at everything, is still outside the cut line for points, technically, is now racing for a championship. Because he won one race. That's where I do see an issue with NASCAR's current standings with how they do the playoffs. Does it change things up? Does it make it kind of interesting? Yes, but then you have guys like Joey Logano. Even at the end of the season, I think he was like 18th or even 20th in points. Below the cut line of even getting into the playoffs on points is where he finished at the end of the season after becoming a champion. So I can see it kind of being an issue sometimes, and I wasn't too happy with last year. And it's because I felt like the correct champion didn't win. And it wasn't even going to be a Hendrick driver, just to let everyone know that. It wasn't. I felt like it should have honestly been Joe Gibbs Racing. And I think that even the race before that, some other drivers got taken out of contention. The whole thing with William Byron and all that. So I was not happy with the end of the playoffs last year. At all. and I felt like the wrong drivers were even in that last race. So that's my one issue that I do have that I won't shy away from. I don't hate NASCAR because of it. It's just it's the one thing I don't love about it. And it's why I do understand a lot of people complaining about the stage breaks. Again, for me, the stage breaks aren't a big deal. I don't think we really need 3 stages. We could probably just do 2. I think at road courses we could maybe do away with them. But it changes up the strategy a little bit too, so I understand how it can be able to add to it. But I don't know. Having a driver who's outside the cutoff line make it in just solely from winning one race, it's cool, but it's not cool. I know it's kind of what they built that whole team around, because they built it around Shane being able to win a road course and win his way into the playoffs. And they didn't even shy away from that in any of the interviews. Shane was straight up asked about that, and he talked about it honestly, that yeah, we're trying to improve on the super speedways and on the oval tracks, but my strong point is road courses, and I knew that that's where I was going to have to capitalize to be able to make it into the playoffs. Now, he was honest too. He is getting better at the ovals, and I agree with that, seeing how he started at the beginning of the year, typically ending a lap down or near the end of the pack. He's had a few races where he's at least been up in the top 20, even breaking into about the top 15 or so. He hasn't been having great races where he's breaking into the top 10 yet, but he's at least been doing a little bit better. He learned a lot in Xfinity, but he was even, again, honest and didn't shy away from the fact that this next-gen car is entirely different from the Xfinity car. So a lot of what he learned last year, where he did make it into the playoffs, he did win a couple races. I felt like last year for the Xfinity Series, he truly deserved to be in the playoffs, and he deserved to be a contender. And I hated him to see him taken out finally, round of 8 for them, but he did good, especially for a first year. So I enjoyed all of that. And if he does really well the second half of the season and gets some more points, then I might not feel this way. And maybe I would have talked a little prematurely on the fact. But at least right now, the way it stands, it's the one thing I don't like about his win. It was a dominating win. It was really cool. He was one of my picks. So that's another fun thing, because it makes me feel like I do know what I'm talking about a little bit, and I'm not just some crazy fan who is just trying to be able to talk about racing, but truly someone that has paid enough attention to be able to talk about it. So I think that's just really cool. And I'm happy he won, because I do consider myself a Shane Van Gisbergen fan. And I have his other win, his Chicago win, up in my collection. I now have his Mexico win on pre-order. I pre-ordered Daniel Suarez's car as well, because for one, he won in Mexico, and for two, it's a beautiful car. So I enjoy it, but unless he turns things around and gets a lot more points the second half of the season, I personally hope he doesn't make it very far in the playoffs. And I know it's kind of mean and a little rude to say, but I don't want to see him win his way to a championship at the end of the season like Logano did, basically. I would like to see drivers that truly deserve it start to win. The regular season championship, I think, should mean more than what it does right now, because to me, a lot of times that's the real champion of the year. Whether they are the one that truly gets the Cup Series champion on their fire suit or not, and they get all the championship merch or not. Regular series championship is a very big deal, and I believe that did go to the right person last year with 2311. That's a Denny Hamlin team. Like, I don't play favorites all the time. Yes, I hope Hendrick does well and everything, but if they're not the ones that deserve it, I'm not going to say they deserve it. 2311, they deserved to be the champions last year. And they even had pretty good time throughout the postseason. I think they should have been 23-11. They got the championship. And that might just be me. Maybe other people think it's a different team that should have got it. I just look at the stats. And I like what the numbers show for that. And I hope that maybe NASCAR, I know they're talking about making some changes. Maybe the playoffs can really be where they change. Maybe we can kind of be able to demolish that and move on. I don't exactly know what they would do. I don't want to say, let's go back to the Winston Cup way. I think that was a really good way to do it on the points and everything, but I just don't see them going back to that. That's why I don't think that's the answer, because NASCAR, I don't know, they're at a point where they don't want to move backwards. It seems like they always want to move forward. And maybe I'm wrong with that. Maybe with Dodge coming back in, or not Dodge, Ram, sorry. Maybe they'll be able to consider, hey, they want, fans want some of the older stuff. And maybe we can be able to go back towards that type of point style. But I just don't see that happening, personally. I don't have good ideas of what they should do. I really don't. I think that there should be a change-up, though. And whether there be a true playoff or not, I also agree with some of the other drivers, though, that if they keep the playoffs, maybe the Final Four need to race it out for 3 races. And you have one of each type of racetrack almost. A super speedway, a short track, and a road course, or super speedway, intermediate, and short track. A couple different ways to do that. I've seen some people throw out there, and I think it would be kind of entertaining. Don't think it would ever happen, ever, but it'd be entertaining to see that, hey, have the Final Four race NASCAR, Xfinity, and the Truck Series, Craftsman, and see who does the best out of that for Cup. Again, I don't think that would ever happen. And if Kyle Busch was in that Final Four, then I would pick him as the winner out of that, just because of how well he does do in Truck Series. So if he could be able to do good in Truck and Cup, then he would have that win. But again, that would all be a fever dream. That would never happen. Another fun thing I've seen people suggest is that, make him race in like sprint cars or some other series as well, and see who can be able to do the best there. I would like to see something like that for Kyle Larson and Max Verstappen to be able to do. I think that'd be a lot of fun to see the two of them, do like a 4-race thing, or maybe they do a NASCAR Cup car, or even go down and they do an Xfinity race or something, and then have them do a open wheel race, whether it be Indy or F1, expedition type thing, even just the two of them. Or 10 guys. A lot of people try to make the whole who's the best driver conversation. That'd be a fun way to be able to decide that. And then you're going to have to get in a sprint car too, though. So, it just kind of depends, maybe every driver wins a different race, but that'd be another interesting thing to do. Again, don't think we'll ever see it happen, but it'd be interesting. I did see where Max Verstappen was at a Red Bull event, and they actually had one of the Red Bull cars there from Xfinity race, and there was a joke made about him racing in it. So who knows? If we ever see that happen, it'd be kind of cool to get Kyle Larson in the same race, so we could be able to have the two of them race together for once. But again, I don't think that's ever going to happen. So fever dreams all around right there. But I do think that something needs to change with the playoff system a little bit. And maybe I'm wrong. Like I said, maybe Shane starts to get a lot more wins the second half of the season, or a lot more points at least in stages, and they can be able to play the points game real well now that they know they're in the playoffs. And he is still learning, he is still adapting, and I definitely think he's getting better. So there's that side of it too. There's more for him to learn, and I think that the more years he stays in Cup, the better he's going to get, and eventually he could be a real contender, and someone that deserves to have that playoff spot. So, and I hate to be like that about deserves. Like he's doing way more than I ever could. So, yes, he deserves it, but it's just the points. And that's what I look at with that, and that's why I say it that way. He won a race. I think that's phenomenal. You don't see every driver win a race. And he won the inaugural race for NASCAR Cup in Chicago, and then now won the inaugural race for NASCAR Cup down in Mexico. So that's a really cool feat as well. And I believe that him being such a good road course racer is why that happened. And a lot of other people are saying he could thank the rain, because our drivers don't know how to drive in the rain. He does. You know what? I'm not even going to try and deny that. I think that could be a little bit of a possibility as well. But that being said, I think I'm kind of done with Cup for the week. We got Pocono this weekend. I'm excited for that. My pick, I've not really seen anything yet. It's Friday morning right now when I'm recording this, so they've not got to practice or anything. But He's won there before on mileage. He just won in Michigan on mileage. You either love him or you hate him. And I can't believe I'm actually going to say it, but I am picking Denny Hamlin to win this weekend at Pocono. So, I think him coming off a week off due to being a new, well, not new dad, he was already a dad, but having another kid come into his life, and having Father's Day off, he's going to come in renewed, and I think that he's going to be able to win another race, especially if it becomes a mileage race like Michigan did, which does happen quite a few times at Pocono. He has won at Pocono before off of a mileage race, and he's also lost at Pocono before off a mileage race. So, and my other pick could be Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch has won at Pocono due to both William Byron and Denny Hamlin running out of fuel, basically. So, I could also see Kyle Busch finally getting his victory, but it's going to come down to how he does in qualifying and practice. I don't know if it's just something with the car or what, but he's been having a lot of bad luck with spinning out. And I know this car has been a lot harder to control, especially on the bumpier tracks, so it's really going to kind of be interesting to see where he qualifies. But if he qualifies really well, I could see this also being the weekend we finally get another Kyle Busch victory. So lots to see. It's going to be fun for that. But with that being said, one other thing I wanted to mention, though, is IndyCar. I've actually been following it pretty well this year after the Indianapolis 500. And I think it's kind of cool. The Detroit Grand Prix, Kurtwood won that. He also won for their last race they had. The first word, I don't like to butcher words, so I'm going to skip that and say it was a good race, though. He's now won 3 races this year. Halu has now won 5. They're the only drivers to win any this year. So between the two of them, they've won all 8 races. So that's cool. I'm looking forward to Road America. I love that they still race there. Wish NASCAR would. Missed that. The other thing I followed, which I usually don't, all the time, but when I do, I consider myself a McLaren fan, and the weekend I decided to follow it, the 2 McLaren drivers collide, and it took one of them out. But F1. I actually followed it for a weekend, and it was a great race. I think it was anyway. It was the Canada Grand Prix, and a lot of fun. Crazy first lap. Had some drivers getting forced off and everything. And then near the end of the race, it was with 3 to go after having a nice clean race. You had the 2 McLaren drivers side by side for a minute there. And yeah, they wrecked each other out. Well, not each other, but Oscar got in front of Lando. And Lando's the one I usually follow. Lando Norris is the driver I consider myself to be a fan of when it does come to F1. I don't follow it all the time, as I always say, but when I do check it out, I'm looking where Lando's at. He made a bit of a mistake. Got in the slipstream of Oscar, got right up on him, went to move to the left to try and go right upside of him, misjudged it, and his front wing hit the rear tire of Oscar, and Lando's wing was just gone. It obliterated it. Then he ran over it. He hit the wall. That broke his left front wheel, and he was done for the day with 3 to go. So, kind of sucks for him, especially I literally just checked it out, and there's that. So, yay. But George Russell, he won. He beat Max Verstappen by just 0.228 seconds. Crazy. But Mercedes wins. Red Bull second. Mercedes also got third. You had a McLaren come in fourth. And then Ferrari fifth. So, kind of the same teams always are near the front, it seems, but I don't mind that. It's kind of the same for NASCAR too, if you look at it, or at least the same manufacturers for like certain tracks. You'll have Chevy or Toyota or Ford that are kind of dominant at a certain track. Typically for Kansas, they even considered the Toyotas dominant there for a few years. Now I would say that it's kind of a toss-up between them or Chevy there. Then you have like Michigan. A lot of times it's been Fords that are dominant there, but as of late, Toyota. So things kind of changed around with that, but it's still cool to kind of see that it's almost the same in every motorsport industry with that. You know, you have the same teams, you have the same drivers that are always up near the front, and those are, of course, your forefront drivers that you put on everything. And I like that. I like that we have drivers that you can be able to recognize no matter what sport you follow. And even whenever I'm walking around, Walmart or Target and trying to find, the Lionel Racing stuff, because I'm a big collector of all that, and I see any of the F1 stuff, I can be able to recognize who it is. And I think that's a really cool thing for anyone, that, that's how recognizable these sports are. And I'm not even big on it. Like I've always, I'm never going to pretend I am. I'm really not big on F1 or IndyCar. I enjoy it here and there. It's just, there's a lot in life going on for me personally. I like to try and follow my NASCAR real closely, as well as my NHRA. I'm excited to see what all goes on with that this weekend, so then I can talk about it more next week. But yes, we have NHRA as well this weekend, so I'm real excited about that. I'm hoping Tony Stewart gets another win, or at least makes it to another final, so that way he can be able to stay good with the point standings. So, of course, I'll make sure to follow up on that too. But that is really going to do it for me this week, everybody. I really much appreciate y'all tuning in and checking this out. I hope you don't mind me just talking about sports and the things that I love. But until next time, stay safe out there, everybody. Let's enjoy some racing this weekend. And y'all have a great day. Goodbye.